Okay, so today's tutorial is going to be about how to use Inkscape to turn something like these text objects or an imported logo that is just a path into a stencil where you've cut out all of those objects from a background rectangle. Now, the first thing I'm going to show here is a mode called Outline, which if we look in View, Display Mode, Outline, we can toggle this with the Control-5 hotkey. And what this does is show you path data. So you can see with the logo here, this actually doesn't have any thickness at the base level. It's a single stroke, and if you look in fill-in stroke in the panel here, let's switch back to normal mode. I can edit this object. We get it selected correctly. So I can change this path thickness still. But if I were to difference this as an object against another path, this border is still an object and not a path, so we can't actually do a difference operation against it. First, we have to convert it to a path. So let's do object to path. And you'll notice that it's renamed that object in the right-hand corner. So I'm going to rename that again so we know what it is. And we will take the business logo, and you should note that I'm going to select not the logical grouping name right here, but the actual path that's inside it. So if I take these two paths, do path difference, you'll see that it did subtract the interior area, but not the stroke. So that wasn't what we really intended, and what you actually want to do is select this path object right here, and if we want to see the outline and not just the interior area get subtracted, then we do stroke to path. So Control-Alt-C. And you'll notice that this changed numbers because it's actually a different object now. And in outline mode, it's a little more obvious what happened. So I'll do Control-Z to go back. And we'll do that operation again. Control-Alt-C. So you can see that it converted this path object to actually define it as the interior is going to be inside between these two lines. So let's switch back to the normal visual mode. And now we're going to difference those two objects, which can be done by Control-. Now, one thing you'll notice is that when I click on this object, it actually selects the logical grouping and not the path. And that's because I am in the pointer mode. So if we want to be able to click on objects instead of having to manually go over to the objects panel and select the path object, the default way to do that is to use the node tool. So you'll notice that we see all of the little nodes that define this path, but it selected that object right away and not the logical grouping above it. So I've selected both objects that are paths, Control-, and we've subtracted one from the other. So if I'm going to do that for another, this business name hasn't been converted to a path yet. It's still just text. As you can see, I can still edit it. So we have to do something called object to path. Shift Control-C. and it has renamed this object. So I'm going to do business name right there, just so we remember what that group is. And you'll notice that it has a bunch of subpaths here that are each individual letter. Now, if I were to select multiple paths and try to difference it against the background, that's actually going to cause some undefined behavior. Let's try that. So that didn't do what we wanted. And if we try a different selection order, that also didn't do what we wanted. So you're kind of left with the option of either going through and individually doing each letter, or what we can do is combine every path under this logical grouping of business name. And the way to do that is path combine, which you can see collapsed everything under that group into one path. So now if I select just this one group, which is path 859, and then the background, you can see that we save time by not having to do each individual letter. So the hotkeys are Object to Path, Shift Control C, Control K to combine, and then Control minus, which we may be not selecting the path since we were in pointer mode there. Let's do Control minus. We've selected everything there. All right, so let's do that again. Object to Path, Shift Control C, Control K, Control minus. Wait, we have to select the background. Control minus again. And voila, we've cut out everything from the background. You do have to repeat it for each individual object. I didn't combine the top level objects of Coniflabs, the business name and the phone number and the logo, because if we were to do that, for some reason the stroke properties for the logo may transfer to the text, and then you end up with some weird rendering. So I still do it individually for each object instead of combining them all into one super path to subtract against the background. But for something small like this, that's not too bad. And there are plugins that you can download if you have like hundreds of objects that you want to difference against a background. There's a GitHub project for that, which I'll leave you to find. But otherwise, for small things, this saves quite a bit of time instead of having to do individual letters. So that covers making a basic stencil cutout with text and an imported path logo.